I'm Karen Webster. I'm the Dean and Principal here at this amazing institute, the LCI Melbourne, and welcome to the series of On the Couch with Dean Webster. I'm absolutely thrilled today to have as my guest Joanna Preston, who is shoe designer extraordinaire.
Thank you.
I've got to say my favourite shoe designer, everybody, so you must look her up. But let's ask Joanna some of the questions. And I thought I'd start, Joanna, with asking you how it all started. Did you know when you were a kid that you were creative? Like, did you have this spark?
My parents had this knack. For our 8th birthday, all 3 of us children got given gifts that were really incredibly appropriate. So I'm the oldest, and I got a sewing machine for my 8th birthday. So I think my mum had taught me the basics of sewing up until then. And I used to make myself little costumes and things when I was really, really, really little. And then my sister, who is a writer, got given a typewriter.
My goodness.
And my brother was given a push bike, ended up going on to race push bikes. So they just that was 8th birthday, something that they just knew was right.
So they either knew you had it instinctively, or they influenced you at a really
No, I think
time.
they knew, yeah. So and I think by that stage I was already quite an accomplished knitter. What was that?
Okay, we just have to explain. We have a sustainable wall behind us with these incredible plants, but there was the self-watering system.
Oh, so that was
and that was the watering system going off.
Right.
But proud to say we've got our sustainable wall. Yes,
fantastic. Yeah. So I think, by the time I was 12, I was a very, very accomplished knitter. I crocheted. I was just very, very creative in that sort of, fabrics costume, and I was always obsessed by shoes from when I was very, very, very little.
Like, a sewing machine is one thing,
yeah.
And a lot of people who get a sewing machine might go on to be a fashion designer or a textile designer. But why the shoes? What was it about shoes?
Well, apart from the fact that I had very, very, very difficult feet to fit, and my mother has got some of the worst feet I've actually had to deal with, apart from really extreme feet. So she had fully formed bunions when she was 15. She eventually had the surgery to have the bunions removed. And her surgeon told her that absolutely guaranteed that that we would get bunions. And so she was obsessive about our feet and our shoes. And so it was always Betsy Priams in Camberwell, and
yes.
Our shoes had to fit. It didn't matter about fashion, they had to fit perfectly. And neither my sister or I have got bunions, thanks to Mum. But then there were things right back from when I was really little. I was the first grandchild on my mum's side of the family, and so her younger brothers travelled a lot, and they brought back American Indian beaded fur slippers. And then my grandmother and grandfather travelled, and they brought back, for my sister and I, they brought back gold sort of Middle Eastern style slippers with glass beads. And then later on, in 1976, my dad got long service leave, and we all went overseas for 5 months and travelled around Europe in a camper van. And so there was buying Italian wedge, like high heels. They were high heels, they're about that high, but wedge heels in 1976. They were so amazing. And also the thing is, the Italian shoes, they were really beautiful, narrow shoes. So they fitted my sister and my feet. So what did my dad say? I still remember you mincing around in those shoes. So it was a very sort of important sort of part of my childhood memories is these shoes.
I love those stories. Did you have a bit of a sad moment the other day when we found out Sergio Rossi died?
I didn't know.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's all right. That's
from coronavirus.
Oh, well, it's been knocking off so many
key people.
Yeah.
So that to me was a really sad one.
But I mean, that's also, like Sergio Rossi, Vivier, so many,
Bruno
back in those days, Robert Clergeot, where there actually were shoe labels, whereas now they sort of seem to be throw-ins for everybody's collection. Everybody's dog wants to have,
to everyone else's collection.
And I mean, there are still that handful of labels that are just really known for their shoes, but I think that, things have obviously changed quite a lot. And I mean, when we first started in fashion in Australia, fashion designers didn't have shoe collections.
No.
It just didn't happen.
No, that's right. Okay, so take us a little bit through your career trajectory. how did you get started? Like in terms of getting into the shoe design. So, you know, you're traveling around Europe in '76. How did you learn about it? Because it's actually a really complex area.
It is. So
you can't actually learn it here in Australia, really.
Well, you could back then.
Oh, okay.
But and I mean, you still can to a point now. But it's even the course that I did. It's really hard to come up with the skills. Like you've got to get in there and you've got to practice and practice and practice. So I was originally wanting to be an archaeologist. I was doing an arts degree at Melbourne Uni, and I loathed it. And I think that when I went through high school, you know, I was a really good all-rounder apart from sport, you know. The thing was that you would go and you would do an arts degree at Melbourne Uni, and then, you know, and so that's what I did.
Yep.
And I just, and the options just weren't on the table, and they weren't sort of encouraged or taken seriously. So I deferred from uni, went traveling with Peter, who is still my partner. And by that stage, I'd already attempted to make my first pair of shoes when I was 16. They were a dismal failure, but I had a go. And then I had spent every cent that I had earned in my part-time jobs buying shoes. So for my 21st birthday, Peter bought me a pair of red freelance shoes, which were $250, which was like, it was a lot of money. Red Nubuck freelance shoes.
Awesome.
So by the time we came back from Europe, I'd really decided that I wanted to learn how to make shoes, and so we just asked around, and I did. It was enrolled in a certificate of orthopedic and bespoke footwear, which was at Collingwood TAFE, and back then still Collingwood was the centre of the boot trade in Melbourne.
Right.
So there were subcontractors.
Just around the corner here.
And all the lovely sort of warehouse apartments, they would have all been shoe factories.
Right.
In fact,
in this complex here that we're part of, which was the Foy and Gibson, there was a shoe factory in this complex. Yeah.
Well, the shoe industry in Collingwood and Fitzroy in Melbourne was one of the biggest in the world. And there's I'm not sure I think they're called Texon Oz, but they used to be called British United Shoe Machinery. And all of the factory outlet shops, all down the red brick buildings, all down that end of Smith Street, they were all British United Shoe Machinery. And I think including that big self-storage place as well, was all footwear industry. And if you go out to their place, which is now in Thomastown, there's pictures of the Queen in Melbourne in 1956 driving down Smith Street, and all the workers hanging out of the factory sort of waving and cheering the Queen on. So it was massive, massive, massive industry, which they were declared sunset industries in the early 70s, and they sort of slowly were phased out. But years ago, I had it back in the day when I could still have a few old timers working for me. I took them out for Christmas dinner to the Provincial, and I've forgotten his name off the top of my head. Anyway, he said, I used to drink here all the time. They used to finish their shift, and then they used to just go around the back streets of Fitzroy and do overtime. You just knock on the door and there'd be overtime for you. He was a clicker, which is doing the cutting. Yeah. So
fascinating.
So in the 70s
so
still.
Did you get trained up then, like through Collingwood TAFE? Did you have someone train you? Did you go and work with someone?
No, it wasn't an apprenticeship. There was an apprenticeship thing, but that was really sort of training people to go into factories and use certain machines. So when I was there, there was a girl who was studying there who was working as an apprentice for Stephen Davies.
Yes, I remember Stephen Davies very well.
And she found out about a master shoemaker who ran intensive courses in Adelaide, and she and I went and did a 2-week, it was like 14 days, sort of non-stop course with him. And came out knowing how to make a pair of shoes with just a treadle sewing machine and a sanding machine that you could make with like a belt sander. That was it. So like you make your own thread, you make your own tools, everything. So I came out of that knowing how to do that.
In 14 days.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Well, I think she and I were good students, you know, because we already had the background. We already knew how to last and do some of the basics. Yeah. So I did 2 more intensive courses with him, and then Peter and I also went and did a last making course with him. So that's where I really, really learnt how to make shoes.
So did you jump straight into then creating your own label?
Pretty much. Probably not the way you should do it. But the thing is, I mean, because that course, they were trade courses, like there was no sort of business development or any other sort of mentoring at all in that sort of course. And unless you could apprentice with someone like Stephen Davies, or where would you go and work anyway? Yeah.
You know? So that was it. And what era are we talking now?
We're talking early 90s.
Right.
Yeah.
So also a difficult time in a way in Australia, like.
Well, it's interesting because you see, when Peter and I went overseas, that was in the year when the wall came down, when everything sort of happened. We travelled and we were looking for a warehouse space because he's an artist and he didn't come into the business with me until later on. He's an artist and a sculptor, and so we needed to have working studio spaces. And before we went overseas, it was the height of the sort of 80s boom, and everything was insanely expensive. So getting workspace as a small startup was almost impossible. And then the market crashed, and we came back, and there was just commercial property.
Everything everywhere, yeah.
So you know, I mean, there are definitely opportunities that come out of. Who knows what the opportunities are going to be that come out of coronavirus, but. It certainly meant that, you know, getting a really big, nice workspace that both of us could have, you know, usable studios in was something that was actually quite attainable that wasn't before.
So, you know, interesting segue, because we are smack bang in the middle of our coronavirus epidemic and we don't know where we're going to be. The big thing is the unknown. But there are a lot of people are talking about newfound or an evolved respect for smaller independent brands, not buying from the fast fashion brands. Do you think that?
We're just going to have to wait and see, aren't we? Because I mean, we don't know whether people are going to fall back into their old habits. We don't know, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with the stimulus and whether people are going to end up being much worse off. Whether, you know, it is a big unknown, and so we just have to be, as small businesses, which is our advantage, is that we can be very, very movable, which big business can't.
Yes, more agile, aren't you?
Yeah.
But the difficulty then
and flexible.
is, you know, your shoes, they're not like fast fashion shoes. They're beautifully crafted, and you pay for that craft. So, you know, we hope that people will have a respect for that as well.
Yes, and that they have some money.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, while I'm still working, I'm still buying new shoes.
Well, you're such a great supporter of all of us Australian fashion designers, which is great to have people like you who do sort of see the value.
It puts a hole in my Visa card. But
I mean, I think there still is, you know, maybe not so much among younger people, but there still is that sort of cultural cringe, you know. So people sort of think, oh, that's so and so from overseas. That's, you know, that's worth so much more and it's so much better. And it's a pity that those people don't, you know, support what comes out of Melbourne, which is often easily as good or better, but very much behind the eight ball in terms of how difficult it is.
In fact, the measure of success used to be if you made it overseas.
Yeah.
It wasn't whether you made it here. Yeah. Where I think there's a shift, because when we have international guests come here, they are actually blown away by our local design expertise and talent and the uniqueness of Melbourne designs.
But I mean, often also in Australia, you know, the traditional way things are is that you're not taken seriously unless you know, like show overseas and, you know, like get that sort of, somehow or other, it needs that overseas interest to validate you. Yeah.
But you know, now we're not showing overseas, so all of that's going to shift.
But the thing is also that whole sort of overseas market, apart from the fact that you've really got to be a wealthy trustafarian to play that game. Like, it's massively expensive, and you're up against enormous budgets in terms of your sort of competition.
Minimum $1 million to put on a fashion show at one of the big trade shows, and it goes for 10 minutes. I could think better ways of spending money. Yeah, exactly. So, tell me a typical day at Preston's Lee. So, you work with Peter?
Yes.
So, look, I mean,
yes. So, we've sort of, after all this time, we do have a pattern and we do have a way of working that's fairly independent of each other most of the time, which is what works best. And now that we don't do our production in Australia, which unfortunately we just couldn't keep up anymore.
So we'll come back to that, because I want to ask about that.
Okay, so I won't go into that too much, but basically it used to be that, you know, I was sort of the production manager and the everything manager and, you know, like Peter's boss, and that was a very, very difficult situation. So now we sort of tend to have very delineated roles, and we work our own days, and then when we're designing a collection we come together, and from that it's not it's okay. It's like, okay, so we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and so I'll go away and work on this bit, and you go away and work on that bit, and then we come back together and sort of liaise.
So
and
you've worked
discuss.
out a pattern that
Yeah,
works.
yeah,
Yeah,
but it
that's
took
great.
a long time.
Because I know that, you know, standing back and seeing you guys work, I look at it as the perfect relationship because you work together in such a creative, but when we see you out, you're such a great team together. You've got a gorgeous
Sometimes.
family. I love that you take your dog to work.
Yeah.
Any of your kids your girls interested in coming up?
Oh no, but my oldest daughter is an industrial designer, and she's a packaging designer for Aesop. So she's certainly, and we recognised that in her when she was very, very little. That was sort of where she was going to go. The other two, we're not sure yet. Yeah.
What did you buy them for their 8th?
I can't remember those sort of things, but look, my middle child, I was absolutely convinced that she was going to go into theatre in one way, shape, or form, or music, and she really lost the love of it for a while, and it was reignited last year with her theatre studies teacher at Swinburne Senior Secondary College. And she won a major role in the school performance for this year, which is Year 12. But of course, now that's not happening.
Oh.
So I don't know, which I feel sad because I feel like that's where her strength is, but I can't force her or push her.
No, that's right.
And Anushka is very musical, quite good at science, but yeah. So who knows? Who knows with those two?
So. Tell us a little bit about the manufacturing, because you used to originally produce just in Melbourne.
Yeah.
You shifted to Bali.
Yes.
Which again seems completely idyllic, like moving your studio and your manufacturing to Bali. And again, from afar, I looked at it and thought, what a life you guys lead, bringing your kids up in that idyllic setting. But what was it like?
Well, look, there were elements of it that were really, really idyllic and beautiful. So we used to eat street food all the time, so if I didn't want to cook, I never had to cook.
No.
Which was really nice for 3 years, and then suddenly it's like you start to want to do those things again, and it's like you can't get the ingredients, so you have to go to 6 supermarkets, and it's all quite hard. So like twice a week at least we would ride our motorbikes to the beach and have dinner at sunset on the beach, and it was all of that was very manageable and affordable, but it was also hard. And I think that there's a lot that we take for granted that you're never going to understand until you move away. Just the easy friendships and the easy networks that we have here, and that if you if you don't know how to do something, there's somebody you can ring and you can ask and they'll tell you, and it's just not like that over there. And it is also very corrupt, so you have to, your doors have always got to be locked. You've got to lock your gate at night, or else somebody's going to come and steal your motorbike or your helmet, or it's just the once you get beyond that sort of lovely holiday side of things, it's there's terrible traffic. Like the education system is really not good, and even if you're going to pay big money, like equivalent to what you pay for private school here, you're not going to be getting the education that you're getting for free at state school in Australia. So just those sort of issues. And the other thing is for the kids, their school cohort, people who are brought up by servants, it's just, you want your kids to know to put a load of washing on and clean up after themselves and help.
Completely different culture, isn't it?
Yeah, and so socialising for them would be, I'd have to take them to a shopping mall somewhere and they'd hang out. There's just not that sort of getting on public transport, that independence, so lots of things we take for granted here. But it was great.
Tell us about the business then. Manufacturing is good there though?
We have got now an amazing team, but it took that. I'd been getting things made there for a while before we decided to move there, because we wanted to see our oldest daughter get through VCE, and I've got a big gap between my kids, so that was sort of this window of opportunity. And sometimes things would come back and they'd be amazing and beautiful. And then sometimes they'd come back and you do a reorder and they'd come up and come back and they'd be all different, and spend just hours and hours and hours fixing things up. And you sort of, once you've lived there, you understand why that is, because the workforce in Indonesia is mostly from Java, because they make much more money working in Bali than in Java, and also because the Balinese Hindus, they have so many religious ceremonies that actually they sort of it's very, and they don't work with the leather, and there's lots of reasons anyway. So the workers are all Muslims from Java, and the workforce is really transient. It just comes and it goes and it comes and goes. So basically, and because they're handmade, you're not sticking them in a machine and the machine's doing all the work. And everything's designed down to the millimeter, so that and they know exactly how much the leather's going to stretch, which only works for really big production. We're talking hundreds and thousands of pairs of shoes. Small production, the sort of thing that we do, is actually very difficult to mechanise. But then it's also hard to find skilled workers to do it by hand.
But there is a natural craft. A lot of people in Indonesia have got that natural affinity for making and craft.
And especially in Bali, they actually have sort of, that is, where they sort of have wanted to specialise their focus in terms of the economy. So it's all about handcraftedness. So there are rules about how big machines can be, etc. So that things can't be they really
can't be too automated or anything.
So look, I mean, it was a baptism by fire in a lot of ways. It was really, really hard getting it right. And I mean, I realised obviously why sometimes it was great and sometimes it wasn't. It was because, like this one was made by Bagus and this one was made by Made or whatever, they were made by different people. And getting somebody to oversee it and QC it properly was really, really difficult. And it was even difficult we actually had our own factory for quite a while, and that was very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And so we decided, okay, this isn't, we got to a point, and when you work for yourself, you'll try all these things, and you'll try a lot before you think, okay, draw a line in the sand, this isn't working, it's time to do things a completely different way. So I thought, okay, no more, I'm not doing this anymore, it's just not working. And so we set about finding some other factories where we were good big clients for. And we found one, and we also set about finding an assistant who could help us, knowing by this stage that we were planning to move back to Australia. So I employ Evie, who is the mother of one of the girls that the kids went to school with, and she works full time and she oversees everything, and we just fell on our feet with her. We were just very lucky.
You find the right team anywhere. It doesn't matter which area, and they make you look good, don't they? That's what.
And then we've worked with people now who they know what I want. They know that the soles must be finished this way. So they're not things that I have to sort of tell them again and again and again and again. So we've got, at the moment, we've got 2 factories that I'm working with. And I mean, not factories, I'm talking like home-based businesses. It's basically a husband and a wife and they employ a couple of subcontractors. So very, very, very small, but really, really highly skilled craftspeople, and we look after them. And so obviously with coronavirus, and we were talking last night, we're not sure whether we're going to, because we don't know when it's going to end. If it ends in May, then I will sell the collection we've just got production, but if it goes on till December, we'll probably skip it. And, so we don't know, but obviously my key considerations going through this is how to make sure that those people who work for me have got an income if we decide we need to take 6 months off.
Yes.
Because I cannot come out of this on the other side and have to then go back to Indonesia and find a whole lot of new workers and start all over again. It's just, it needs to be them, and so I've got to look after them. So, yeah.
But that's admirable as well, because...
I've got a responsibility for them because they look after me.
Yes.
And so I mean, actually...
It's so refreshing to hear this though, because you hear such dreadful stories about the fashion industry and how people will treat others in offshore production, but you treat them as your employees, as your workers, and with absolute respect and
Yeah.
integrity.
Yeah.
And it's great. That's what we have to do.
And I mean, I do push them, but I don't push them in a way, like I push them because sometimes, like I push them in the sense that I want a certain outcome and it might be something they've never done before. So I'll push them to try,
Yeah.
you know, but
Yeah.
I'm not gonna,
Not a no-go.
No. It's more just that it's stretching themselves. And I mean, that's something, like that's the other thing that we're lucky because it's generally the workforce over there, it's quite difficult to work out their motivations because the motivations that you have here, say you have employees and they're on a minimum wage, and if as a small business you can't afford to pay more than that, you know, the thing for the people that you're employing here at that sort of basis is that they're learning something new. You're challenging them, you're teaching them, you're mentoring them, but it's not like that over there.
Right.
So it's you know, it's completely different motivations, and it's sort of quite hard to work that out and navigate that. Yeah.
I don't envy you with all of that.
But it was good. It was a really like I have no desire. In fact, now I watch travel shows in Asia. It's like I don't really know if I'd be bothered. But I don't really like. I'm quite happy to not go there if I can avoid it, you know, and just do the design that we do here and the sampling here and send it over with really good spec sheets. And you know, if I have to, it's close enough that we can get on a plane and go.
That's right.
Which is, you know, I mean, because there's
of
Europe and this, and you know, like where do you go? And maybe we should stop doing Bali and go. But the thing is, you know, it's you know, it's a 5-hour plane trip. And I did last year I was going to do some things with Estelle in her show at the Rivoli or whatever last year, and I suddenly got some stuff back. It's like, oh, okay, we're getting into 4th or 5th sample here, and I can tell that it doesn't matter how many times I try and explain this, and I don't understand. So on Tuesday I booked a flight, and on Thursday I left.
Yeah.
And went and stayed for 2 days and sorted it out and came back. And so that's, you know.
And it's not that expensive
Yeah.
to get there.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah. So I don't envy you on that, but one thing I do envy you, kind of. Every woman's dream is to have a shoe collection like you must have. Do you have a favourite? Do you have a favourite style? Is there a favourite shape?
I'm wearing the Marlena Raff boot, which is and this is, I don't know, this must be 5 years old now, 4 or 5 years old, and I've worn them like every winter. In fact, I wore these the day we moved out of the studio in Smith Street, and that was a big day, very hard physical day. The cut of this is a Royal Australian Air Force cut. And I love this last. The last is called the Marlena, and we've done lots and lots of things on this last. And I love the sort of gently bulbous toe shape. And I also really love this sort of curvaceous heel, which is it's a sort of signature. It's a version. Yours is more sort of geometric.
Yeah.
But so the Marlena, and this is one of my favourites, as I said. Like they get worn and worn and worn. And most of the shoes on this last are favourites of mine. And I have favourites in every collection. Yeah, and hopefully everybody else loves them as much as me, and then they get to be in the classics collection for a few years, and I can wear them.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Do you revisit some of the archive there?
I'm thinking about revisiting. This particular collection that we've got coming out, I've revisited 2 styles, and I've done a boot version of a shoe that I did a few seasons ago. And then for the next couple of collections, I'm thinking of revisiting the archive and just sort of playing with some things. Because every now and again, somebody came into our shop a few weeks before the shutdown anyway, we had an event at the shop. And she was wearing a pair of shoes, and I'm like, oh my God, they're ours, and they're really, really nice. And I thought, you know, I was toying with the idea of, if we have to go back and it's not going to be a full season, do I just do 3 styles from before? So I was still not quite sure what we're going to do to come out the other side of this. But so I went through the archives, and this particular pair of shoes that she was wearing that I had decided to revisit were from 2002.
Wow.
18 years ago, and she's still wearing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they still look great.
Yeah. Well, I've got my well-worn
Yes.
boots because I couldn't decide, you know, that I'm a little embarrassed to show you how trashy
No,
they
that's
are,
all right. But if I can't take them today, I need to get them. I need to give them a renovation for you, because that's the other thing. Because we're real shoemakers and they're real shoes, you can actually do quite a lot in
Quite a
terms
lot,
of
Well, I think well-worn boots are just because they're well-loved boots as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, no, and they have so much more character once somebody's actually once they've been lived in.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So we're in this kind of new world order. How do you promote yourself? Like, this is a really interesting, we were talking before about, being on a runway show and things like that, and it's all a bit crazy
And nefarious, what the sort of benefits that you get out of it.
But do you use social media? Like, how do people get to find out about Preston's Lee?
Look, I mean, I suppose mostly it would be word of mouth. And I mean, gone are the days, where you get magazine editorial and all that sort of stuff and your career sort of goes off, which is sort of what happened to us actually in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, they the magazines didn't have, 10 or 20 or 30 different people submitting to them. They had somebody who they, employed to go out there and find them new things, and somebody found us. But I was doing sort of completely bespoke back then, and slowly but surely we sort of moved into a model that is our ideal.
Yes.
I suppose.
So
it's like you work sort of hard.
Small
You work,
run.
yeah.
But
very,
manageable.
very, very, very slow fashion. Very, very, very small runs. But where we get to sit down and design a collection, which is the exciting part, and see the end results.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you manage it from beginning to
Yes.
end.
Yeah.
You have a lot of balls in the air then.
Yes.
Don't you? You've got to juggle
Yes.
a lot of things when you do that.
Yeah. But I mean, I suppose I'm used to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you control every aspect
Yes.
of it as well.
Yeah.
So describe to me a typical customer, or do you not have a typical customer?
Um,
Besides me, of course.
Well, no, I mean, I suppose like my typical customer is somebody like you, like educated, career, got a really interesting, dynamic job, doesn't want to look like everybody else,
Right,
professional women from sort of 35 to 75.
Yep.
Yeah.
And respect quality.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Yes. And want something that sets them apart from everybody else.
Yes, distinctive.
Yeah.
I would say that's why
Yeah.
I come to you as well, because it's not something I'm going to see everywhere
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they are beautifully made.
And then like there's certainly there's the like Trippin customers.
Yes.
Some of them, but they can be like Mac users in like Mac versus PC. It's like, no, I only use Mac. Trippin people can be a bit like that. Oh no, I only wear Trippin. But then the Fluvog customers are quite like Fluvog customers are much more sort of like wide ranging. So if somebody buys Fluvog, then generally they will understand and appreciate and buy Preston's Lee. So there's it used to be when we did the Vatican, way back when campers was probably much more sort of what's aspirational. The camper customer was a Preston's Lee customer, but their campers sort of changed quite a lot since the
and become more mass, hasn't it now?
Yeah. And then I mean, obviously, lots of people in the arts and people in film. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see what happens for those people coming out the other end, because the film industry's been completely decimated.
Completely, yeah. But it will have to revitalise. So
yeah. I didn't even get to finish telling you about my average day.
yes, tell me an average day.
My average day is mostly, as with probably everybody, is mostly doing admin and answering emails and packaging up online orders. And if I'm in the shop, like I'm sort of doing that, and we've got a buzzer now, so I can do it from my office at the back, and looking after customers, liaising with the team in Indonesia. Troubleshooting, like where's that box that disappeared, that the labels, the DHL sent I received some London designers work last week, and they received my shoes, so trying to find out where they are. And then doing, if I've got repairs, I'll try and take a day maybe where I go to my other studio where my big machines are, so I can sort of do some renovations and repairs and things like that.
So
and
explain that. You've got 2 studios and the shop.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
how does that work?
Okay, So we've so the shop. I've got a little sort of small office and tiny little workspace out the back there. So I'll do sort of basic shoe processing at the shop in between customers, and that's also a bit of an office. And then where we live is a pretty grungy warehouse space, which Peter's got his studio, and his studio there has got the 3D printers. And the computer files and all that sort of 3D rendering and everything gets done there. And I've got a little office there as well, which I'm using at the moment because I'm not going to the shop. And all my design books and everything are there. And then we rent another studio which has got 3-phase power, which is where the handful of our big machines are. So finishing machine, I've got a back part, a quarter reforming machine, which is basically on a shoe. This part needs to be really sharp and tight. And when they're made by hand, they often come off the last and they're not. So they get put through a machine which has got hot and cold. And
so
things come out, so it gives it a nice sharp sort of line there.
So it really molds.
So the sanding machines and all the things that make dust and everything are at another. We've got another studio which Peter uses as his paint studio because I don't like him working on art when we're in the house, because us making noise bothers him. Him sort of having dramas about his sort of art practice sort of bothers us. So it's nice to keep that separate. So he does his personal art practice from there, and then the big machines are there as well. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a journey though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you wake up in the morning and go, where am I going to be today?
It is a bit like that. There's a lot of planning about how, where am I going to work? What am I going to do? But
So if you weren't designing shoes,
yeah,
what would Joanna Preston be doing?
I would probably have gone into doing historical costume for film and television.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's that kind of anthropology and history and all of that being part of your heart and soul love.
Yeah.
You could probably still be commissioned to do things like that.
It would be nice. I've been asked on the odd occasion, but their time frames are always so tight.
Crazy.
And when I was asked in the past if I'd be interested, I think they did those two. I think SBS and ABC both did one where they sent people back to sort of build a cabin, and live like the early sort of settlers. And we were asked to do shoots for that, and I think I was asked, and we were doing all our manufacturing in-house, and I think we were either trying to come up with a collection or doing the production, and I think it was like a 6-week turnaround. It was just like, nah,
can't do it.
I would love to have been able to, but our year is sort of there's a real rhythm to the year, and it's sort of planned along those things, and to have a big project just thrown at you
disrupts
everything would fall apart. So it's not something I have done, but it's not something that I would rule out.
So do you have a favourite film that captures history that you ever reference, or anything that kind of sparks?
I don't reference film so much, but I love all the British costume dramas. I love them, and Dangerously Aged. Love historical costume.
That's incredible.
Corsetry, all that stuff. Yeah,
incredible.
I've got lots and
again,
lots
it's
of
that
those
attention to detail and the play with structure and all of those things that completely make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it does. So it makes sense to you, does it?
It does. Yeah. It does. Yeah. So another question to ask you is, what advice would you give people today who want to start their own brand? Because a lot of. So we're talking to students who are studying design, and they've got their own creative practices, or artists, and they're going to want to at some stage probably launch their own thing, and they probably look to you and go, wow, that would be an awesome life. How should they do it? How would they do it?
I would recommend learning as much as you can.
Yes.
About everything, the business sides of things, and learn from people who I mean, this is the hard part because there's not necessarily that many people who you can go to learn from, but learn from people who've done it the hard way, you know?
Yeah.
There's no point going, once, this is going to sound terrible, but somebody who came from a very wealthy family, and her family put her through Cordwainers, and she said,
So Cordwainers is the program in the UK.
Yeah, it's very, very, very expensive.
Yeah.
And she said, you know, I went to this amazing, you know, like interview with Stella McCartney, and I just thought, I'm not interested. Because I want to hear from somebody who's had no money behind them, who's really come from nothing and done it the hard way, you know, without
and made it work.
Yeah, exactly. So I would intern as much as you can.
Yes.
Yeah, and be a really good intern, because I've had lots of interns in the past. I don't do it so much now, and you get some really good ones, and they usually end up getting a job. And
so the interns have got to be sponges, I believe. It's like you've got to just soak up every bit of knowledge and information around you, but also be willing to do anything. You can't be precious.
Yes, because the thing is, it's actually really hard to find jobs that you can give into. Like you can have a lot of things ruined in a day, or you can plan all this work for the intern to come in on Friday and do that work. You know, it's all things you know that they can do, and you plan the week around the intern, and then they ring up and they don't come in, and so then you've got to do all that work that you put aside for them, and it's so intern and be a really good intern. And if you are a good intern, like somebody will, like, it would be much easier to go, here, so and so's left, would you like their job, than to go out and find somebody else,
because they've already had training.
Yeah, because you've trained them, but also they've proven themselves already.
And you're also incredibly well networked. You know, you've got a great, I suppose, because also you design shoes. You also design shoes for a lot of the independent labels, and you work closely with a lot of the kind of a whole group of creatives in mainly Melbourne.
Yeah.
So if you can't give someone a job, you would highly recommend them to someone else. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And collaborate, but be careful in that.
Yes, okay.
Like you know, partnerships are fraught things to do, but definitely collaborate where you can, because you know you get access to other people's connections and markets and clients and what other advice? Don't try and do everything yourself.
So
and learn from your mistakes as fast as you can. That's hard.
That's it. But I think you've got to take risks.
Yes.
So if you don't do that, you're not going to learn from your mistakes, because if you went back in your life and said, I should never have done Bali, or I should never have done certain things, you would never be where you are today.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it definitely gives you, okay, such and such happened then, I'm in a similar-ish situation now, what would I do? I'm not going to do the same as what I did that, yeah.
So one final question I've got for you. What next? What next for the brand? What next, you know, where do you take the label next? Are you quite happy with the status quo of where you are? And I know we're in a strange thing, but what's your dream? If you could say, this is where I want to be in the next 5 years, what would that be?
Well, you see, as I'm older, I'm not as ambitious, because I know how much it can cost you financially and in terms of physical and mental stress growing too fast. You know, like if you say, for example, if you do a trade show and you come back with lots of orders, where are you going to get the money from? Are you going to do all that work yourself? You know, like having worked, you know, 70, 80, 90 hours a week and worked every weekend for 6 weeks in a row, and, you know, like, and you get burnt out. So I would like to steadily grow my business, and get new customers, and actually also, I suppose our client base has sort of aged as I have, so I need to get what we do under the eyes of a younger market.
Reconnect with the next generation.
Yeah, because I mean, certainly I don't like shoes. I mean, shoes are great because you don't have to sort of put yourself in too much of a box. like I think you probably do a little bit more with garments.
Yes.
Got to really delineate your look. And I mean, there's a very specific Preston's Lee look, but it's not, you know, for a woman of such and such an age. Like my daughter would wear my shoes,
Yes.
I wear my shoes, my mum would wear my shoes.
Well, my
you know,
daughter
and,
steals
yeah.
my Preston's Lee shoes.
Yeah,
yes.
so I mean, we've got definitely an advantage in that, but about making sure that we're reaching a new audience all the time, and I suppose I'll be focusing a lot on what I can do in terms of digital online marketing strategies, but I want to grow my business without lying awake at night panicking about where the next
Yes.
dollar's going to come from, because I've been there and I've done that, and I don't want to be working 70 hours a week.
No.
Yeah, so
So it's
I want to
the
grow my
evolution,
business in a
not
very.
the revolution.
So the thing is, it's all and it's also, I mean, sustainability. Apart from, you know, our air miles and, you know, like how we treat our staff, it's actually sustainability is also about how we actually can live in this. It's, you know, it's not an easy.
Our
it's
own
not-
well-being, our own.
Yeah, exactly. Sustainability is also about the well-being of you as the artist and creator, because the buck stops with you. Everything is down to you, and the relationship with the client, and it's a lot to juggle. And so certainly I'm very ambitious, but I want to still grow in a way that I'm still nurtured in myself and my family.
I couldn't think of a better way to end our amazing conversation today, because I think that's exactly a good message for all designers out there. Look after yourself and it'll help look after the business.
Yeah.
Joanna, thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen.
And having a chat. It's
Thank you.
great.
It's
And
been
being
good.
on the couch.
Yeah.
Thank
Excellent.
you.